Imagine trusting someone with everything, not just spare money, not just an investment, but your entire life savings, your retirement, your future. Everything you've worked for, built over decades, handed over to one man, and every month you check your account, and it's growing, slowly, safely, consistently. No losses, no stress, just profit. It feels like you made the smartest decision of your life. But what if I told you none of it was real? Not the profits, not the strategy, not even the money you thought you had. What if I told you it was all an illusion, a carefully constructed lie that lasted for decades? This is the story of Bernie Madoff, the man who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, and the thousands of people who trusted him, right until everything collapsed. Before the scandal, before the arrests, before the world knew his name for the wrong reasons. Bernie Madoff was respected. Not just respected, admired. He wasn't some outsider trying to break into Wall Street. He was Wall Street, a pioneer in electronic trading, a man who helped build the very system investors trusted. His firm wasn't flashy. It didn't rely on hype. It relied on something far more powerful: reputation. And over time, that reputation became unshakable. People didn't question Bernie Madoff. They trusted him completely. And that trust became the foundation of everything that followed. At first, it seemed simple. Investors gave him money, and he delivered returns. Not huge, risky returns, but steady ones, consistent, predictable, the kind that made people feel safe. Month after month, year after year, the numbers kept going up. Even when the market struggled, Madoff's clients didn't. Their accounts stayed strong, stable, growing. And that's when something interesting happened. People stopped asking questions, because when something works, you don't question it, you accept it. And if you're lucky enough to be part of it, you protect it. But there was something else that made Madoff different. He didn't accept just anyone. You couldn't just walk in and invest. You had to be invited, recommended, connected, which made it feel exclusive, and exclusivity creates desire. Suddenly, getting into Madoff's fund wasn't just an investment opportunity, it was a privilege. People wanted in, badly. And the more people wanted in, the more powerful the illusion became. Because behind the scenes, there was no complex strategy, no genius system, no secret formula, just a simple truth that no one could see. Bernie Madoff wasn't investing the money, he was moving it, taking money from new investors and using it to pay the old ones. A Ponzi scheme, but not a small one, not a temporary one. This was something much bigger, something designed to last. And as long as new money kept coming in, the illusion stayed alive. Years passed, then more years. The scheme grew larger, more people joined, more money flowed in, billions of dollars, entire fortunes placed into Madoff's hands. Charities trusted him, banks trusted him, celebrities trusted him. And why wouldn't they? Everything looked perfect. The statements were clean, the numbers made sense, the results were consistent, too consistent. But no one noticed, or maybe no one wanted to notice. Because the truth is, people don't just invest money, they invest belief. And once belief takes hold, it becomes very hard to break. Even when there are signs, even when things don't quite add up. Because admitting something is wrong means accepting that you've been fooled, and no one wants to believe that. But every system has a weakness, every illusion has a breaking point, and for a Ponzi scheme, that breaking point is simple. It needs new money, constantly. Without it, everything collapses, and for years. Madoff managed to keep the flow going. New investors replaced old ones, money kept moving, the system held together. But then, something happened that he couldn't control. 2008, the global financial crisis. Markets crashed, fear spread everywhere, investors panicked, and suddenly, they wanted their money back. Not later, not eventually, now. Withdrawals began, then more withdrawals, then thousands of investors, all asking for their money at the same time. But the system wasn't built for that because the money wasn't there. It had never been there. And in that moment, everything unraveled. The illusion that took decades to build collapsed in days. Madoff knew it was over. There was no fixing it, no covering it up, no escaping it. After years of control, the truth had finally caught up, and when it didn't come quietly, it came all at once. He confessed, not to the public, not to the authorities, but to his own family. And from there, the story spread, fast. The fallout was devastating. Billions of dollars gone, not lost in the market, gone, families destroyed, retirement funds wiped out, charities forced to shut down, people who had spent their entire lives saving, left with nothing. And the worst part? They trusted him completely. This wasn't just financial loss, it was betrayal. Madoff was arrested, charged, put on trial. The man who once controlled billions now stood in a courtroom facing the consequences of everything he had done, and the sentence? 150 years in prison, a number that reflected not just the crime, but the scale of the damage. But even that wasn't enough to undo what happened. Because the real damage wasn't just the money, it was the trust, the belief, the idea that someone so respected, so established, could be hiding something so massive. It changed how people saw the system. It made them question everything. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Because Bernie Madoff didn't just fool a few people, he fooled the system, he fooled experts, institutions, entire networks of investors who believed they were safe. And for years, they were convinced they were, until they weren't. And even today, the story isn't over, because the lesson remains. Scams like this don't disappear. They evolve. Different names, different faces, same promises, easy money, safe returns, no risk. The same illusion, just in a new form. And that's the most dangerous part, because it means it can happen again. But to really understand how something like this happens, you have to go deeper. Because this wasn't just about money, it wasn't just about deception, it was about psychology, about how trust is built and how it's used. Because Bernie Madoff didn't force anyone to invest, he didn't trick people with loud promises or flashy marketing, he did something far more powerful. He made people feel safe, and safety is the most valuable currency in the world. Think about it. In a world where markets go up and down, where fortunes are made and lost overnight, the idea of stability becomes irresistible. And that's exactly what Madoff offered. Not extreme wealth, not overnight success, just consistency, just reliability, just the feeling that everything was under control, and people believed it. Because it didn't feel like a scam, it felt like security, and that's what made it so dangerous. Because the more stable something appears, the less likely people are to question it. And over time, that lack of questioning becomes acceptance, and acceptance becomes trust, and trust becomes vulnerability, and that's when the system becomes unstoppable. Because once enough people believe, the truth doesn't matter anymore, only the illusion does. And for decades, that illusion held, until it didn't. And when it broke, it didn't just expose one man, it exposed a system that failed to ask the right questions, a system that allowed something impossible to continue for far too long. Because somewhere along the way, people stopped being skeptical, they stopped being careful, they stopped asking, what if this isn't real? And that's the real story here, not just how Bernie Madoff fooled the world, but how the world allowed itself to be fooled. Because at the end of the day, scams like this don't succeed because of one person. They succeed because of belief, because of trust, because of the human desire to feel safe. And that desire can be manipulated, it can be exploited, it can be turned into something dangerous. And that's exactly what happened. So the question isn't just, how did this happen? The question is, could it happen again? And the answer is yes. Because the same patterns still exist, the same promises still exist, and the same belief still exists. And as long as those things exist, the next Bernie Madoff is only a matter of time. And that's the story of how Bernie Madoff built one of the biggest financial illusions in history and how it all came crashing down. But here's the truth most people ignore. Stories like this don't just belong to the past, they repeat. Different names, different faces, same deception. And the next one might already be happening. So if you want to understand power, money, and the truth behind the rise and the ruin, then make sure you subscribe to Rise and Ruin Empire, because the next story might be even bigger.